Hello, everyone. So we are in the panel on smart cities, and I would like to welcome our panelists, Mika from InterDigital, Ulrich from FIWARE, David from Buckinghamshire, and Jim from Huawei. So far, in the smart city deployments, what you see is very vertical, very ROI-specific deployments in terms of smart lighting, in terms of garbage collection. But as the deployments and the smart city discussion is moving forward, what you see is the cities of different size, whether it's a small, medium, or large-size cities, have different problems. Large cities have a lot more money, so they were able to deploy easily. They have enough staff. They can hire a CTO and cover everything through one department, whereas medium and small-sized cities don't have that level of budget. The other thing that you see is also many of the problems that cities are solving are not related to technology. They're trying to solve the problem for their citizens. And for them to do that, they need sometimes solutions, or sometimes they're looking at requirements that may not have a clear ROI. So from that perspective, what we see absolutely critical for in some cases will be public-private partnership. And the panel that we have brought in together are the panelists who have worked on public-private partnership and are sustaining that, and also the city officials who have looked at it. In this panel, what I'm going to do is, first I will let everyone introduce themselves and their organizations, and then we will follow up with a couple of questions around this. At the same time, I'll say if anybody here would like to ask a question while during the panel, please feel free. You don't have to wait for the last 5 minutes to ask your questions. So Mika, I'm going to start with you to talk about the organization and how you work in the smart cities.
Okay, thank you, Arty. So, good afternoon. I'm Mika Rasinkangas with InterDigital, responsible for business development for our IoT business unit, which we actually just this week rebranded as Cordant. What we do in IoT space, we basically provide middleware software solutions. Some people call them IoT platforms. But in terms of what they do, they basically provide the means to ingest data from virtually any source of data, focusing and concentrating on real-time data, and providing that data, making it available, making it consumable for different services and applications. Our marquee deployment in smart city space, which is our big focus area as a business, is actually in the UK. It's called One Transport, and that's an open data marketplace where basically we aggregate data from various different public sector entities, but also private companies, bring the different data sets together and again make them consumable for different services and applications. That's called One Transport.
Ulrich.
Yeah, then I'll continue. Ulrich Ahle, my name. I'm Chief Executive Officer of the FIWARE Foundation. FIWARE has started as a private-public partnership of the European Commission together with some leading European companies. At that time, when it was initiated some 5 years ago, it was called the Future Internet Private-Public Partnership. And FIWARE is an open source platform for smart solutions. So it is more than just an IoT platform, coming with a data standard to standardize the communication to the sources of data, to sensors, to actors, but also to other sources like social media or other IT systems. And on top of this platform, there are existing software building blocks, we call them generic enablers, which could be used to quite efficiently create new smart solutions. So there are functionalities for big data analytics, for user interface creation, for workflow management, and so on. And we are addressing 3 vertical domains because it is important to have really the smart solutions instead of just having a platform. And these 3 domains are smart agri-food, so digitization of food and food production and agriculture, second one is smart industry, and the third one is smart city. And in the meantime, more than 110 cities from 25 different countries in the world have decided to create their digital solutions, to create their smart city based on FIWARE. And what we see is that in a lot of cities, several context information, several data sources are already available, but it is very often difficult to bring them together onto one platform. They are today very often organized in silos due to organizational reasons, due to data format reasons, or whatever it is. And one of our missions is to overcome these hurdles, be it technical or be it organizational hurdles, to enable what we call the so-called multi-sided marketplaces, to bring data onto one platform coming from different areas and simply to create smart solutions based on this data. And that's what FIWARE is for. The FIWARE Foundation itself has been founded end of last year, so just 1 year old, by 4 leading European companies, but in the meantime we are more than 100 members in the foundation and it's growing quite rapidly.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm David Aimson. I'm Programme Manager for Buckinghamshire County Council. It's a local authority based in England.
My name's Jim Morrish. I'm Chief IoT Solution Consultant for Hawai Technologies. So I look across all of IoT really, but specific focus on smart cities. It's just such an interesting area. So what does Huawei do in smart cities? Well, we characterize it as the brains and the nervous system. So we have the brains, a centralized platform which would support applications, and we have the nervous system, so the communications and the wired and wireless communications to backhaul information from connected devices. So we do kind of the slice in the middle for a smart city. We don't do the actual devices and we don't do the actual applications that sit on top. We provide all of that stuff in the middle to hold it together, and we partner with key experts or companies with key capabilities in different spaces in the industry to develop those specific applications. And we have a wide range of applications running with many partners around the world.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Stephen, I'm going to start with you. Since Buckinghamshire has regional responsibilities of multiple towns, we would like to understand what are the requirements or what are the challenges that you look for in solution, or what are you planning to deploy?
Yeah, I think from our perspective, one of the main challenges is budget. We'd like to have smart city solutions in our suburban areas, but we simply do not have the budget for this. We have pressures from a social care perspective, from adult and children's social care. So in our transportation arena, we do have the visions that we'd like to be in line with London because we are, I suppose, a neighbouring authority. But we do not have the budget to get where we want to be with this, really.
Okay. Jim, I'm going to ask you to talk about what are the issues, since Huawei is a pretty big company and they're all over the world. I wanted to see what kind of requirements that you have seen from city officials, plus if you want to comment on what David is saying, which is one of the big issues that officials face.
Absolutely, and it's something that you raised in the introduction as well, and also raised a potential solution too in terms of the public-private partnerships. So there are needs and there are needs. So there are needs in terms of smart city applications, and there are things that you want to be smart, and you want smart parking, and you want smart bin recycling, et cetera, and smart lighting. And many of these can cost in really quite quickly. They can be some really quite remarkable returns in implementing smart lighting. But then there's the other need, which is the need to fund it and the need to maintain the authority on a limited budget. And of course, maintaining a level budget and a tight budget removes the ability to invest for a return. It makes it somewhat difficult. There's a financial constraint there in terms of the availability of cash to invest to get the returns. So that's a very real constraint you're living with. We find that in a lot of places. I think that a lot of cities face those same problems. They don't just have the money available to make the investment to save the money in the long term. One of the solutions that you mentioned, Arty, in the introduction was public-private partnerships. There's also vendor financing to help level out some of those cash flows. But I'd also even then introduce another level of complexity, which is or level of barrier effectively, which relates to the political cycles. Because what you don't want to happen, or what the mayor of Buckinghamshire or whoever it is in that equivalent position doesn't want to find himself in the position of, is initiating all of these smart solutions and developing all of these services which come online after the next electoral cycle, when his successor is imposed. He wants to take the credit for it, and he wants it to happen in that electoral cycle. So there's another level of constraint there.
Yeah, I mean, you'll find where these smart solutions have been successful in Barcelona, in Amsterdam, they've had the political prowess behind them. And I think at the regional level where we are in the suburban areas, you need to have more of a stronger political arm to get these pushed through. Maybe at a national level, I don't know, or maybe at a sub-regional level where you're grouping a number of local authorities together to have more buying power to sort of create these smarter solutions at a more cost-effective level.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this question. Do you guys see the central authorities or the central government or the central authorities in different countries are stepping in or supporting this activity? Have you seen that, some of this?
I have seen that. So examples would be Singapore, obviously, not going to surprise anyone. India, there's hundreds of smart cities in India. It's an initiative of the Modi government, although their definition of smart is not quite what our definition of smart in Barcelona might be. China, there's about 330 different smart cities. So this smart city by diktat, by top-down, enforced implementation is a very real thing. It drives a lot of adoption. There are many other ways to get to smart city. There's the fast followers. There's the new build smart cities. What I particularly like is the campus environments. So somewhere like a dockside or an industrial campus or something like that, they have the same needs as a smart city, but you have a person who owns the P&L, and at that point you have a guy who can take the decision on the basis of a financial analysis of whether to deploy smart solutions or not. And you've relieved yourself of many of the budget constraints and the political constraints around smart cities, but they are smart city solutions, and that's not a bad place to start in the market effectively to demonstrate the success of them.
Maybe I can just add to this. I think to start with a discussion on do I have budget or not might be one way. Yeah. What I experience, I'm coming from Germany, where there's no real public and nationwide program on smart cities in place. It's different in other countries, as you mentioned already, for example, also here in Spain, where there are quite some initiatives going on. That's not the case in Germany. What I experienced is there is an organization of German IT and telco companies called Bitkom. They have initiated a call called Smart City and asked mid-size cities, so not too small, and but also not too big to be able really to implement also ideas. And these cities should have been between 100 and 150,000 inhabitants. And members of this Bitkom organization will, for the winner, contribute in kind. For example, German Telekom will implement a fiber network, SoftLab will provide solutions, and so on. And there were several cities applying for this call, and it was just one city who could win. In this case, it was a city called Darmstadt. But also in the other cities, which were on as finalists, they started to create their digital vision. They created their strategy to become a smart city, and simply this process created so much momentum. In this final round, the mayors had to personally present their digital strategy in front of the jury, and the preparation for this created so much momentum in these cities. Also in this, we call them silver medalist cities, so they don't get anything from the call, but all of them, that are 4 silver medalists, all of them decided to implement their smart city strategy. So they know where they want to go to, they know what they want to digitize within their city, and now they are starting to look, how can we finance it? And it's maybe the other way around,
Right,
yeah?
yeah.
Not first to ask for budget, but first to have a strategy and a target where to go to, and then you will find ways to realize it.
Yeah. Yes.
Maybe I can add another kind of a challenge or requirement, what we are hearing more and more from the cities or regions, if you will. So a lot of the big cities obviously have deployed a lot of all kinds of smart city use cases, implementations, spot solutions, if you will. And now these cities are realizing more and more that, okay, these solutions work really well for this particular use, but then again, I could probably be more efficient if I could combine some of these things, if the data would actually be usable not only for this department, but also for that department, and so forth. So with that, what we see is we hear more and more requirements towards standardized technologies. And obviously from our perspective, I mean, our solutions based on one M2M standard, and we are seeing a pickup in various different markets in terms of different geographies, but also in different industries towards standardized technologies.
Yeah.
So, so we talked about the budgeting issues, what are the requirements, and the mid-sized cities and the things that Ulrich, you talked about. FIWARE has done a pretty good public and private partnership. So we would like to understand what are the lessons that you learned, and where are you taking the FIWARE? What have you learned while you were doing this, and where are you guys taking FIWARE?
I think one major lesson learned is to eliminate these silos. As I mentioned before, a lot of data are already available, a lot of open data are available, and it is important to get access to this data. And that's why we came up with the approach to standardize the data format or the format for data exchange. It is called NGSI, the Next Generation Service Interface, which in the meantime became a de facto standard in smart cities. And we are working with several standardization bodies now to bring it also to a formal standard. And this is simply important to be able to easily connect data sources on the one side, but also to be able to transfer solutions which have been created in one city to another city and to reuse it. For example, to give you some one practical example, a smart parking solution that has been created for the city of Porto, using this data standard, is now transferred to Santander here in Spain and to other cities within Europe. And the effort to do so is minimal because all are based on the same data standards and based on the same data models. And therefore, as I said, the effort is minimal. And I think that is one of the main lessons learned, to agree on standards, to be able to realize this synergy effects which we generate. That's one major point. And I think the other lessons learned is when you decide for a platform, be it a closed source, a closed platform, or be it an open source approach with open APIs and open data models, it is important that you look for a platform which has a certain ecosystem, to be able to have access to different solutions which have been created already, which simply can be reused to get inspiration for smart city solutions, for digital solutions. And you need simply this certain amount of ecosystem to be able to find the solutions and then to reuse it. The other option would be if you don't have access to such an ecosystem, that you have to do everything yourself, which will not be financeable, especially in the area of smart cities. And coming back to one of your opening remarks, stating big cities have money and small cities don't have money. I think that's not right. For example, looking again at Germany, and Germany is a leading country in regards of digitization in the area of smart industry. Looking at Industry 4.0, and I think one could state this, but Germany is definitely maximum in the middle field of the European countries when it comes to digitization in the public area, when it comes to digitization in smart cities. And our headquarters is in Berlin, and believe me, Berlin is the capital of Germany, but it's not rich. And it doesn't have really the money to do so. There are several other cities which have the capabilities and which are smaller.
Yeah, I think the way to say it is that the amount of money that is needed in many cases to take cities to the next level is huge, and I don't think most of the cities will not have enough budget to do that. So that's why this kind of a public-private partnership or the kind of funding that Jim was talking about would be important. Mika, coming back to you, I wanted to ask you, how are you building the partner ecosystem, and what are the requirements, other things that you are hearing in the market space?
Yeah, so I think the requirements, the standard-based solutions, one of the big things which I mentioned a moment ago, but in the smart city space, what we are really seeking to do is, on one hand, we work together with the cities or regions, but at the same time, we work together with different companies, because this IoT space is so huge that almost whatever you're seeking to build, there aren't that many companies, that many entities that could do everything on their own. I would almost claim that nobody. So it's a game of different partnerships. It's basically building the business opportunities the way that you do what you do best, and you partner with different companies, different people who do their part best, if you will. Like, for example, we are not an analytics company. We don't do extensive analytics in transportation space. Yet then again, transportation is a big focus area in smart cities, and hence a big focus area for us. So for analytics needs, we basically work with different analytics companies who are actually experts in analytics, but also in transportation. So hence transportation-related analytics. So partnerships, in short, is the key.
Jim, do you want to take this question? You want to talk about it also?
Ecosystem and partnerships?
Ecosystem and partnership?
Yeah, it's key. I mean, without doubt, there is no one company that can deliver the end-to-end solutions within IoT, let alone in the diversity of applications that's required within a smart city. So partnerships key in IoT and even more so in smart cities. So unsurprisingly, we've embraced. Actually, by the way, picking up on another message, earlier message around standardization, that emphasizes the need for standardization, because you need all these guys to be able to work together in a reasonably documented and controlled way. The less fragmented it is, the more standardized it is, the more scale there is, the more transferable the technologies are, and the lower the risk for the end user, which is key, because you don't want a smart cities project to fail. So back to partnership, back to ecosystem. So unsurprisingly, we do pursue an ecosystem strategy, and more so than most. So one of the things, so I mentioned that Huawei's approach is around, is around the brain and the nervous system, and it's about the horizontal elements supporting smart city solutions. We explicitly do not do the applications. We always partner to do those applications. So we have an extremely strong partnership play. I mean, every application that we do is with a partner. So there's probably a couple of hundred partners that we have with relevance to smart cities. So it's very much a partnership thing, an ecosystem.
Yeah, but I think it's important also private-public partnerships need a business model behind. Yeah, so also the private partners will not put money on the table. Finally, they will have to earn money. Otherwise, it simply doesn't work. But very often in this overall strategy, there are elements which are, let's call them low-hanging fruits. Like Jim, you mentioned it, smart lighting.
Yes.
Is something where you are able to install an infrastructure. So for example, to give you one example, the city of Montevideo in Uruguay learned last year about FIWARE. They created a platform based on FIWARE as a smart city platform, and now starting to replace 70,000 streetlights in their city, implementing LED light, implementing smart lighting, and very often when replacing this infrastructure part, you can get additional benefits. For example, can put sensors on the streetlight to identify parking lots, yeah, and to implement smart parking. There are solutions in place, for example, with cameras, with picture recognition, which can identify whether a parking lot is occupied or not, bring this information onto the platform, put it into a navigation system, and come up with the functionality to be directed not to your target address, but to the closest free parking lot to this target address. And that again is then another smart city application addressing other demands. And in the meantime, there are cities, again coming back to Germany, about Stuttgart, it is said that 30% of the traffic in town is traffic looking for free parking slots. And there is a strong discussion in Stuttgart going on to prohibit diesel cars to go into the city because the air pollution is a real problem. And if it's possible to reduce this 30% of the traffic, it would be a major step into the right direction.
Thank you. I just wanted to pick up on the thing you said at the top there in terms of the smart lighting solutions costing in. And I just wanted to add some numbers to that because it is crazy the amount of benefit that you can get. So if you start off with sodium lights and swap those to LED and a smart system, you're looking at 60-70% reduction in power consumption, and power consumption is often the biggest budget element of a local authority, so that's a huge impact. And you're looking at 40-50% reduction in operation and maintenance costs of the smart, of the lighting solutions. So, I mean, you're nodding. These numbers do exist. It's a crazy benefit, a huge, huge benefit for that solution. And as you say, the communications network there, you can then piggyback other things on it, bin monitoring, etc., etc. So really, I just wanted to underline quite the significance of the benefit that there is there.
Right. So one of the things that is also going on is, that is something that I started with, is that it's easy to define the ROI, right, for these solutions that are very specific, and you say, here is my return on investment. And many times, like some cities are also looking at democratizing the data, making the data available to the public, for example, or they are trying to figure out how do whatever technology they're deploying or creating, how do they sustain it, right, over 5 years, 10 years. So they're coming up with requirements, they are redoing it, then they deploy something, and then it's a cycle, it's a process that they're following. So with that in mind, with that in the context, what advice, and I'll start with you, Mika, this time, just to go like that. What advice would you offer to city authorities and to solution providers to deploy these kind of solutions?
Sorry, what and why would be...
what advice would you provide to smart cities?
Advice, thank you.
Yeah.
So actually, I'm not so sure I would call it an advice. Let's call it an observation. So since I don't work for a city, so I don't pretend knowing better than the cities what they actually do. So as an observation, what we see on a lot of these smart city deployments is that the cities that are more advanced, further down the evolution, if you will, and have deployed their solution, be it the smart lighting or smart parking or whatnot, and start to have like multiple different deployments, different solutions out there. Particularly in transportation space, you see this, that I like to put it the way that life doesn't end at the border of the city. So you have a lot of people commuting from suburbs to the city for work, coming to the city for entertainment, whatnot. So transportation as a flow goes around the borders of the city. So actually, a lot of these things you should be looking at also in like level of a region, kind of regional solutions. And back to the big cities, the kind of the metropoles of the world who are further down on evolution, we hear a lot of these people also recognizing this issue. They realize that it would be beneficial for them as well as the neighboring suburbs, that there would be ability to access each other's data, particularly in the transportation space, that could create much more efficient solutions, not necessarily within the boundaries of a city, but from the end user's perspective, from the consumer's perspective, and at the end for all of the cities, because like traffic, when you can optimize the whole flow of it, the whole journey from start to the end, it will be better for all the parties involved, be it the traveler and be it the cities or regions providing the particular service and the infrastructure to enable it.
Thank you. Thanks, Mika. Ulrich, same question for you. What advice would you give to smart city officials?
Yeah, so smart cities is quite new to me personally. I've been working most time of my career in the area of industry, and the last 10 years in smart industry, working for a consulting company and guiding a lot of industrial companies on their way to become digital companies. And I think for cities it is the same, that becoming digital, and smart city is nothing different than becoming digital, because digital in total, it will be smarter, it will be cheaper, and it will be faster. And becoming digital should start at the very top. So here, it should start with the mayor, with his team, to guide the organization to come to a smart city strategy. So simply to define where will the city, or where should the city be in 10 years' time, let's say 10 years' time, and then come up with the tactics how to reach this target, and find
Please note that the IoT Solutions World Congress is now closed for the day. We look forward to seeing you tonight at the IoT Solutions Awards.
Okay,
We
thank you very
definitely
much.
have two
We
minutes
had
left, I'm
3
sure.
minutes left.
Okay, so start with a strategy, and then implement small steps, have first successes, and we talked about low-hanging fruits, implement that, and then you will find also financing for the next steps.
Thank you. David.
Yeah, I think understanding the needs of local authorities, and going back to what Ulrich said as well, not approaching local authorities at a county level, approaching it at a regional or national level is very important, because I think if you can have a clear return on investment and show the clear benefits of a particular solution, then you can push it through far more easily than rather than approaching each individual authority.
Thank you. Thanks, Jim.
I think I'd spin up to a top level, and say that whatever the area is, however that's defined, and it'll be different in different countries. In some it'll be a city, in some it'll be a region, whatever it is. What's needed is a strategic plan. And that strategic plan includes things like, what's the population going to be in 10 years' time? How is it going to be housed? What kind of support services are there going to be? Social support services. What's the attitude to green space? How much car driving do we want? How much industry do we want to take place in this area? And therefore, what kind of taxes are we going to levy on them? And what kind of revenues are we going to get? So this is a top-level strategic plan for a local authority or a town or whatever it is. Once that is in place, the question is, how can technology enable that? And that's technology, technology which includes IT and IoT, and there are many other. Taxation is another way to achieve this, and there are public education, etc. So a whole bunch of levers that can be pulled. So the key, from my perspective, is to set that strategic plan, and then to look at the levers that there are to achieve that strategic plan, of which one is technology, and that includes IoT. But it should be seen in that context, not as an end in itself, would be my view.
Yeah. Thank you, Jim. That's very well summarized. We have 5 seconds left, but I'm assuming we can take a few extra minutes here. So if anyone has any questions. I think there is a mic right in the middle, or is there? We cannot hear them.
Hello, hello. Oh, there
Yes,
you go.
Good.
In my own time. I wanted to pick up on something that you said and actually just posit a thought. I believe that the solutions to create a smart city exist, and partnerships are crucial. But for me, the major barrier for smart cities isn't partnerships necessarily between industry and public sector, but the multiple agencies and stakeholders in the public sector themselves. I can pick on Buckinghamshire because I'm from High Wycombe, but as a good example, Buckinghamshire does have responsibility for all of its parking, but that's actually quite unique. In other cities, you might have multiple agencies. For example, to pick on Buckinghamshire, the district councils collect the waste, but the county council disposes of the waste. Yep. Is it for regional authorities or super authorities like county councils to force smart cities? How do you encourage innovation with multiple stakeholders, with multiple budgets that will all require buy-in?
It needs to go, like I said earlier, it needs to go at a regional level. I think from Buck's perspective, it may be quite difficult to go at a national level at this stage. And in England, you have a lot of regional authorities like the Midlands Combined Authority, Transport for Scotland, and in our region where we live, we've got the Economic Heartland, which has just been put together recently. And I think we need to get together as a collective to approach these strategies at that level. I think doing it individually, we're not going to get anywhere because of that very point.
Thank you, David. Any other questions? Okay. So I would like to.
Can't really see
Or do you
anyone
see?
else, no.
So I haven't seen.
No, I don't see it.
I think we're done.
Yes. So with that, I would like everyone to join to thank our panelists. Thank you.
Thank you.